Part 4 of Chapter 11 of the Book of Camping and Woodcraft, a guidebook for those who travel in the wilderness. Recording by Larry Wilson. The Book of Camping and Woodcraft, a guidebook for those who travel in the wilderness, by Horace Kephart. Part 4 of Chapter 11, Camp Cookery. Vegetables, etc. The general rules for cooking vegetables are few and simple. 1. Do not wash fresh vegetables until just before they are to be cooked or eaten. They lose flavor quickly after being washed. This is true even of potatoes. 2. Green vegetables go into boiling salted water. Salt prevents their absorbing too much water. The water should be boiling fast, and there should be plenty of it. They should be boiled rapidly, with the lid left off the pan. If the water is as hot as it should be, the effect is similar to that which we have noted in the case of meats. The surface is coagulated into a waterproof envelope which seals up the flavor instead of letting it be soaked out. In making soup, the rule is reversed. 3. Dried vegetables, such as beans and peas, are to be cooked in unsalted water. If salted too soon, they become leathery and difficult to cook. Put them in cold, fresh water, gradually heated to the boiling point, and boil slowly. 4. Desiccated vegetables are first soaked in cold water, according to the directions on packages. Potatoes require long soaking, and they should be boiled in 3 waters. Place in boiling water slightly salted, and proceed as with fresh vegetables. To clear cabbage, etc., from insects, immerse stalk upward in plenty of cold water, salted in the proportion of a large tablespoon to 2 quarts. Vinegar may be used instead of salt. Shake occasionally. The insects will sink to bottom of pan. To keep vegetables, put them in a cool, dry place. Conditions similar to those of a good cellar. Keep each kind away from the other, or they will absorb each other's flavor. Potatoes boiled. Pick them out as nearly as possible of one size, or some will boil to pieces before the others are done. If necessary, cut them to one size. Remove eyes and specks, and pare as thinly as possible, for the best of the potato lies just under the skin. As fast as pared, throw into cold water, and leave until wanted. Put in furiously boiling salted water. Then hang kettle a little higher where it will boil moderately, but do not let it check. Test with a fork or a sliver. When the tubers are done, about 20 minutes for new potatoes, 30 to 40 minutes for old ones, drain off all the water, dust some salt over the potatoes (it absorbs the surface moisture), and let the pot stand uncovered close to the fire, shaking it gently once or twice till the surface of each potato is dry and powdery. Never leave potatoes in the water after they are done. They would become watery. Potatoes boiled in their jackets. After washing thoroughly and gouging out the eyes, snip off a bit from each end of the potato. This gives a vent to the steam and keeps potatoes from bursting open. I prefer to put them in cold water and bring it gradually to a boil, because the skin of the potato contains an acid poison which is thus extracted. The water in which potatoes have been boiled will poison a dog. Of course, we don't eat 'em skin and all, like the people in the nursery rhyme, but there is no use in driving the bitterness into the potato. Boil gently but continuously, throw a little salt now and then, drain and dry before the fire. Mashed potatoes. After boiling, mash the potatoes and work into them some butter and cream, gin you have any. Then beat them up light with a fork. However it may be with a woman, a dog, and a walnut tree, it is true of mashed potatoes that the more you beat 'em, the better they be. Potatoes steamed. After you have once learned the knack, you will find that the best of all ways to cook potatoes is by steaming in a hole in the ground, as directed in the last chapter. No danger of them being watery then. Baked potatoes. Nessmuk's description cannot be improved. Scoop out a basin-like depression under the forestick 3 or 4 inches deep, and large enough to hold the tubers when laid side by side. Fill it with bright hardwood coals, and keep up a strong heat for half an hour or more. Next, clean out the hollow, place the potatoes in it, and cover them with hot sand or ashes, topped with a heap of glowing coals, and keep up all the heat you like. In about 40 minutes commence to try them with a sharpened hardwood sliver. When this will pass through them, they are done, and should be raked out at once. Run the sliver through them from end to end, to let the steam escape, and use immediately, as a roast potato quickly becomes soggy and bitter. Fried potatoes. Boiled or steamed potatoes that have been left over may be sliced 1/4 inch thick and fried. They are better à la lyonnaise. Fry 1 or more sliced potatoes until they are turning yellowish. Then add sliced potatoes. Keep tossing now and then until the potatoes are fried somewhat yellow. Salt to taste. Potatoes fried raw. Peel and slice into pieces 1/2 inch thick. Drop into cold water until frying pan is ready. Put enough grease in pan to completely immerse the potatoes, and get it very hot as directed under frying. Pour water off potatoes, dry a slice in a clean cloth, drop it into the sizzling fat, and so on, 1 slice at a time. Drying the slices avoids a splutter in the pan and helps to keep from absorbing grease. If many slices were dropped into the pan together, the heat would be checked and the potatoes would get soggy with grease. When the slices begin to turn a faint brown, salt the potatoes, pour off the grease at once, and brown a little in the dry pan. The outside of each slice will then be crisp, and the insides white and deliciously mealy. Sweet potatoes, boiled. Use a kettle with lid. Select tubers of uniform size. Wash, do not cut or break the skins. Put them in boiling water and continue boiling until when you pierce one with a fork you find it just a little hard in the center. Drain by raising the cover only a trifle when kettle is tilted, so as to keep in as much steam as possible. Hang the kettle high over the fire, cover closely, and let steam 10 minutes. Sweet potatoes, fried. Skin the boiled potatoes and cut them lengthwise. Dust the slices with salt and pepper. Throw them into hot fat, browning first one side, then the other. Serve very hot. Potatoes and onions, hashed. Slice 2 potatoes to 1 onion. Parboil together about 15 minutes in salted water. Pour off water and drain. Meantime be frying some bacon. When it is done, remove it to a hot side dish, turn the vegetables into the pan, and fry them to a light brown. Then fall to, and enjoy a good thing. Beans, boiled. Pick out all defective beans, and wash the rest. It is best to soak the beans overnight, but if time does not permit, add 1/4 spoonful of baking soda to the parboiling water. In either case, start in fresh cold water, and parboil 1 pint of beans, for 4 men with hearty appetites, for 1/2 hour, or until one will pop open when blown upon. At the same time parboil separately 1 pound fat salt pork. Remove scum from beans as it rises. Drain both. Place beans around the pork, add 2 quarts boiling water, and boil slowly for 2 hours, or until tender. Drain and season with salt and pepper. It does not hurt beans to boil all day, providing boiling water is added from time to time, lest they get dry and scorch. The longer they boil, the more digestible they become. Baked beans. Soak and parboil as above both the beans and the pork. Then pour off the water from the pork, gash the meat with a knife, spread half of it over the bottom of the kettle, drain the beans, pour them into the kettle, put the rest of pork on top, sprinkle not more than 1/2 teaspoonful of salt over the beans, pepper liberally, and if you have molasses, pour a tablespoonful over all. otherwise a tablespoonful of sugar. Hang the kettle high over the fire where it will not scorch, and bake 6 hours. Or, better, add a little of the water that the beans were boiled in, place kettle in bake hole, as elsewhere directed, and bake all night. Baked beans are strong food, ideal for active men in cold weather. One can work harder and longer on pork and beans without feeling hungry than on any other food which I am acquainted, save bear meat. The ingredients are compact and easy to transport. They keep indefinitely in any weather. But when one is only beginning camp life, he should be careful not to overload his stomach with beans, for they are rather indigestible until you have toned up your stomach by hearty exercise in the open air. Onions boiled. More wholesome this way than fried or baked. Like potatoes, they should be of as uniform size as possible for boiling. Do not boil them in an iron vessel. Put them in enough boiling water to cover them. Cover the kettle and boil gently, lest the onions break. They are cooked when a straw will pierce them, about an hour. If you wish them mild, boil in 2 or 3 waters. When cooked, drain and season with butter or dripping, pepper, and salt. Green corn. If you happen to camp near a farm in the roasting ear season, you are in great luck. The quickest way to roast an ear of corn is to cut off the butt of the ear closely, so that the pith of the cob is exposed. Ream it out a little, impale the cob lengthwise on the end of a long hardwood stick, and turn over the coals. To roast in the ashes, remove one outer husk, stripping off the silk, break off about an inch of the silk end, and twist end of the husks tightly down over broken end. Then bake in the ashes and embers as directed for potatoes. Time about 1 hour. To boil, prepare as above, but tie the ends of husks. This preserves the sweetness of the corn. Put in enough boiling salted water to cover the ears. Boil 30 minutes. Like potatoes, corn is injured by overboiling. When cooked, cut off the butt and remove the shucks. Cold boiled corn may be cut from the cob and fried, or mixed with mashed potato and fried. Greens. One who camps early in the season can add a toothsome dish now and then to his menu by gathering fresh greens in the woods and marshes. Many of these are mentioned in my chapter on the edible plants of the wilderness. They may be prepared in various ways. Here are a few. As a salad: watercress, peppergrass, dandelion, sorrel, etc. Wash in cold, salted water, if necessary, although this abstracts some of the flavor. Dry immediately and thoroughly. Break into convenient pieces, rejecting tough stems. Prepare a simple French dressing thus: 1 tablespoonful vinegar, 3 tablespoonfuls best olive oil, 1/2 teaspoonful salt, 1/4 teaspoonful black pepper. Put salt and pepper in bowl, gradually add oil, rubbing and mixing till salt is dissolved. Then add by degrees the vinegar, stirring continuously 1 minute. In default of oil, use cream and melted butter, but plain vinegar, salt, and pepper will do. Pour the dressing over the salad, turn the latter upside down, mix well, and serve. A scalded salad is prepared in camp by cutting bacon into small dices, frying, adding vinegar, pepper, and a little salt to the grease, and pouring this scalding hot over the greens. Greens may be boiled with salt pork, bacon, or other meat. To boil them separately, first soak in cold salted water for a few minutes, then drain well, and put into enough boiling salted water to cover, pressing them down until the pot is full. Cover and boil steadily until tender, which may be from 20 minutes to an hour, depending upon kind of greens used. If the plants are a little older than they should be, parboil in water, to which a little baking soda has been added. Then drain and continue boiling in plain water, salted. Some greens are improved by chopping fine after boiling, putting in hot frying pan with a tablespoonful of butter and some salt and pepper, and stirring until thoroughly heated. Poke stalks are cooked like asparagus. They should not be over 4 inches long, and should show only a tuft of leaves at the top. If much older than this, they are poisonous. Wash the stalks, scrape them, and lay in cold water for an hour. Then tie loosely in bundles, put in a kettle of boiling water, and boil 3/4 of an hour, or until tender. Drain, lay on buttered toast, dust with pepper and salt, cover with melted butter, and serve. Jerusalem artichokes must be watched when boiling, and removed as soon as tender. If left longer in the water, they harden. Dock and sorrel may be cooked like spinach. Pick over and wash, drain, shake, and press out adhering water. Put in kettle with 1 cup water, cover kettle, place over moderate fire, and steam thus 20 minutes. Then drain, chop very fine, and heat in frying pan as directed above. Mushrooms. Everyone who camps in summer should take with him a mushroom book, such as Gibson's, Atkinson's, or Nina Marshall's. Such a book in pocket form, with colored illustrations, is a desideratum. Follow recipes in book. Mushrooms are very easy to prepare, cook quickly, and offer a great variety of flavors. Canned tomatoes. When you can get butter, try this. To a pint of tomatoes add butter twice the size of an egg, some pepper, very little salt, and a tablespoonful of sugar. Boil about 5 minutes. Put some bread crumbs or toast in a dish, and pour tomatoes over them. Canned sweet corn. Same as tomatoes, but omitting sugar and bread. Add a cup of cream if convenient. Jambalaya. This is a delicious Creole dish, easily prepared. Cut up any kind of small game into joints and stew them. When half done, add some minced ham or bacon, 1/4 pint rice, and season with pepper and salt. If rabbit is used, add onions. Serve with tomatoes as a sauce. Pot pie. Take 1/2 teaspoonful baking powder to 1/2 pint of flour. Sift together and add 1 teaspoonful lard or butter by rubbing it in, also a pinch of salt. Make a soft biscuit dough of this, handling as little as possible, and being careful not to mix too thin. Roll into a sheet and cut into strips about 1½ inch wide and 3 inches long, cutting 2 or 3 little holes through each to let steam escape. Meantime you have been boiling meat or game, and have sliced some potatoes. When the meat is within 1/2 hour of being done, pour off the broth into another vessel, and lift out most of the meat. Place a layer of meat and potatoes in bottom of kettle, and partially cover with strips of the dough. Then another layer of meat and vegetables, another of dough, and so on until the pot is nearly full, topping off with dough. Pour the hot broth over this, cover tightly, and boil 1/2 hour, without lifting the pot cover, which, by admitting cold air, would make the dough sad. Parsley helps the pot when you can get it. Slumgullion. When the commissariat is reduced to bacon, corned beef, and hardtack, try this sailor's dish, described by Jack London. Fry 6 slices of bacon, add fragments of hardtack, then 2 cups of water, and stir briskly over the fire. In a few minutes mix in with it slices of canned corned beef, season well with pepper and salt. When Napoleon said that soup makes the soldier, he meant thick, substantial soup, soup that sticks to the ribs, not mere broths or meat extracts, which are fit only for invalids or to coax an indifferent stomach. Soup, says Nessmuk, requires time, and a solid basis of the right material. Venison is the basis, and the best material is the bloody part of the deer, where the bullet went through. We used to throw this away. We have learned better. Cut about 4 pounds of the bloody meat into convenient pieces, and wipe them as clean as possible with leaves or a damp cloth, but don't wash them. Put the meat into a 5-quart kettle, nearly filled with water, and raise it to a lively boiling pitch. Let it boil for 2 hours. Have ready a 3-tined fork made from a branch of birch or beech, and with this test the meat from time to time. When it parts readily from the bones, slice in a large onion. Pare 6 large smooth potatoes. Cut 5 of them into quarters and drop them into the kettle. Scrape the 6th one into the soup for thickening. Season with salt and pepper to taste. When by skirmishing with the wooden fork you can fish up bones with no meat on them, the soup is cooked, and the kettle may be set aside to cool. Any kind of game may be used in a similar way, provided that none but lean meat be used. Soup is improved by first soaking the chopped up meat in cold water, and using this water to boil in thereafter. Soup should be skimmed for some time after it has started simmering to remove grease and scum. Bean soup. Boil with pork as previously directed until the beans are tender enough to crack open. Then take out the pork and mash the beans into a paste. Return pork to kettle, add a cup of flour mixed thin with cold water, stirring it in slowly as the kettle simmers. Boil slowly an hour longer, stirring frequently so that it may not scorch. Season with a little salt, but plenty of pepper. Pea soup. Wash well 1 pint of split peas. Cover with cold water and let them soak overnight. In the morning put them in a kettle with close-fitting cover. Pour over them 3 quarts cold water, adding 1/2 pound lean bacon or ham cut into dice, 1 teaspoonful salt, and some pepper. When the soup begins to boil, skim the froth from the surface. Cook slowly 3 to 4 hours, stirring occasionally till the peas are all dissolved, and adding a little more boiling water to keep up the quantity as it boils away. Let it get quite thick. Just before serving, drop in small squares of toasted bread or biscuits, adding quickly while the bread is hot. Vegetables may be added 1/2 hour before the soup is done. Dried fruit. Soak overnight in cold water, just enough to cover. Too much water makes them insipid. They are quite eatable then, without cooking. Add 1/2 cup of sugar and some spice. Simmer until done. Fruit should not be cooked in an iron vessel, nor in tin, if it can be avoided. Schnitz und Knepp. This is a Pennsylvania Dutch dish, and a good one for campers. Take some dried apples, not evaporated ones, which are tasteless, but the old-fashioned dried apples of the country, and soak them overnight. Boil until tender. Prepare knepp as directed for pot pie dough, only make a thick batter of it instead of a dough. It is best to add an egg, and use no shortening. Drop the batter into the pan of stewing apples, a large spoonful at a time, not fast enough to check the boiling. Boil about 1/2 hour. Season with butter, sugar, and cinnamon. Plain plum duff. Put into a basin 1 pound of flour, 1 heaping teaspoonful of baking powder, 1 pound raisins, stoned if possible, 3/4 of a pound of fat of salt pork, well washed and cut into small dice or chopped, and 2 tablespoonfuls of sugar. Add 1/2 pint of water and mix well. Dip a cloth bag large enough to hold the pudding into boiling water, wring it out, and apply flour well inside. Put in the pudding and fasten it up, leaving a little room in the bag for the pudding to swell. Now place the whole in enough boiling water to cover the bag, and boil for 2 hours, turning the bag several times to prevent its scorching against the bottom or sides of the pot. If necessary, add boiling water to keep the bag covered. When done, take the pudding from the pot, plunge it into cold water for an instant, and then turn it out to be eaten. Suet may be used to advantage instead of pork fat. Spices and molasses also, if you have them, and want a richer duff. Keneally. Pie. It is not to be presumed that a mere male camper can make a good pie crust in the regular way. but it is easy to make a wholesome and very fair pie crust in an irregular way, which is as follows: Make a glorified biscuit dough by mixing thoroughly 1 pint flour, 1 teaspoonful baking powder, 1/2 teaspoonful salt, rubbing in 4 heaped tablespoons of lard, and making into a soft dough with cold water. In doing this, observe the rules given under biscuit. The above quantity is enough for a pie filling an 8 by 12 reflector pan. Roll the dough into a thin sheet, as thin as you can handle, and do the rolling as gently as you can. From this sheet, cut a piece large enough for bottom crust, and lay it in the greased pan. The sheet should be big enough to lap over edge of pan. Into this put your fruit (dried fruit is previously stewed and mashed), and add sugar and spice to taste. Then with great circumspection and becoming reverence, lay on top of all this your upper crust. Now with your thumb press the edges of upper and lower crust together all around, your thumb prints leaving scallops around the edge. Trim off by running a knife around the edge of pan. Then prick a number of small slits in the top crust, here and there, to give a vent to the steam when the fruit boils. Bake as you would biscuits. Note that this dough contains baking powder, and that it will swell. Don't give the thing a name until it is baked. Then, if you have made the crust too thick for a pie, call it a cobbler or a shortcake, and the boys, instead of laughing at you, will ask for more. Doughnuts. Mix 1 quart of flour with 1 teaspoonful of salt, 1 tablespoonful of baking powder, and 1 pint of granulated sugar, and half a nutmeg grated. Make a batter of this with 4 beaten eggs and enough milk to make smooth. Beat thoroughly and add enough flour to make a soft dough. Roll out into a sheet 1/2 inch thick and cut into rings or strips, which may be twisted into shape. Fry in very hot fat, turning when necessary. Drain and serve hot. Or mix with less water into a stiff dough and manipulate as explained under fried quoits. And now, having done my share, I will loll back at mine ease and smoke mine pipe, while the other fellow does the dishwashing. Gilbert Hamerton, in his Painter's Camp, dwells lovingly upon the little details of camp life, excepting this: 5 p.m. Cease painting for the day. Dine. After dinner, the woeful drudgery of cleaning up. At this period of the day am seized with a vague desire to espouse a scullery maid, it being impossible to accommodate one in the hut without scandal, unless in the holy estate of matrimony. Hope no scullery maid will pass the hut when I am engaged in washing up, as I should be sure to make her an offer. There is a desperately hard and disagreeable way of washing dishes, which consists primarily in going for everything alike with the same rag, and wiping grease off one dish only to smear it on the next one. There is another, an easier, and a cleaner way. First, as to the frying pan, which generally is greasiest of all, pour it nearly full of water. Place it level on the coals and let it boil over. Then pick it up, give a quick flirt to empty it, and hang it up. Virtually it has cleaned itself, and will dry itself if let alone. Greasy dishes are scraped as clean as may be, washed with scalding water, and then wiped. An obdurate pot is cleaned by first boiling in it some wood ashes, the lye of which makes a sort of soap of the grease, or it may be scoured out with sand and hot water. Greasy dishes can even be cleaned without hot water, if first wiped with a handful or two of moss, which takes up the grease. Use first the dirt inside the moss as a scourer, then the top. To scour greasy knives and forks, simply jab them once or twice into the ground. Rusty ones can be burnished by rubbing them with a freshly cut potato dipped in wood ashes. The scouring rush, Equisetum hymenale, which grows in wet places and along banks throughout the northern hemisphere, has a gritty surface that makes an excellent swab. It is the tall, green, jointed, pipe stem-like weed that children amuse themselves with by pulling the joints apart. In brief, the art of dishwashing consists in first cleaning off nearly all the grease before using your dishcloth on it. Then the cloth will be fit to use again. Dishcloths are the supplies that first run short in an average outfit. End of Part 4 of Chapter 11.